In 1912, a man in St. Louis published a course of instruction with a condition attached to it that nobody would accept today. You could not have it all at once. It arrived by post, one lesson a week, for 24 weeks, and the author told his students plainly not to read it the way you would read a novel. One part per week. Read it, sit with it, and do not go forward until it has gone in. Think about what that actually asks of a person. 6 months of holding something you cannot finish. 6 months of knowing there are lessons in the back you have not been allowed to see yet. His name was Charles Haanel, and before he wrote a word of it, he had spent 15 years as an office boy at an enameling company. 15. Then he ran his own companies, and only then, at 46, did he write the thing he is remembered for. And I want you to notice what is strange here, because it is not the content of the course. It is the shape of it. He built a fixed term with no exits, and he built it deliberately, and it worked on hundreds of thousands of people. There is a reason for that. It has almost nothing to do with information, and almost everything to do with what you are permitted to do with your mouth while the term is running. So here is what I am proposing, and it is the whole video in one sentence. Between now and December, you go quiet. Not quiet in your life, quiet about one specific set of things. And I am going to be exact about which ones, because the vague version of this advice is useless and you have heard it before. Here is what we are going to go through. 7 silences, the plan itself, and why saying it out loud is not harmless. Your reasons, and the strange arithmetic of explaining yourself. The complaint, which is the most expensive sentence most people say. The request for permission, which almost nobody notices they are making. The progress report, which is where good work quietly dies. The old story, the one you have told about yourself so many times you think it is a fact. And then the 7th, which is not a silence at all. It is the one sentence you do say, and where you say it, and it is the reason all 6 of the others matter. 4 months, roughly. Haanel's students got 24 weeks. You have about 16. Silence 1. The plan itself. Start with the thing that feels most innocent, because it is the one that costs the most. You decide on something. Maybe it is a real decision this time, the kind that has a date on it and a number in it. And within about 90 seconds, some part of you wants to tell someone. That impulse is not a character flaw. It is not vanity. It is the most natural thing in the world. And I want to be careful here, because this is the point where most people teaching this get preachy and lose the plot. You are not weak for wanting to say it. You want to say it because saying it feels like doing it. And that is not stupidity. That is the mechanism working correctly on the wrong target. Here is what I mean. Florence Scovel Shinn taught that the word is not a description of reality. It is an instrument that acts on it. She meant that literally. When she sat with people in New York and gave them something to say, she was not giving them a mood. She was handing them a tool and telling them where to point it. And a tool that can build can also spend. That is not a contradiction. It is just what tools are. So when you announce the plan, something real happens, and it is not nothing. You get a small settling in the chest. A little of the tension goes out of the thing. The friend says, "That sounds great," and you feel, briefly, like a person who is doing it. You are not. You are a person who described it. But the nervous system does not draw that distinction as sharply as you would like, and the small relief you just felt was purchased with a piece of the pressure that was supposed to make you move. Napoleon Hill spent 20 years with men who had built enormous things, and he came away insisting that a definite aim has to be held with a particular kind of intensity to do anything at all. Intensity is the word that matters, not clarity. You can be perfectly clear about a plan and have no charge on it whatsoever, and a plan with no charge on it is just a nice sentence you own. Announcing bleeds the charge, every time. And there is a second cost, which is worse and slower. Once you have said it, the thing is no longer only yours. It is now in somebody else's head, with your name on it, and some part of you starts managing their version of it. You start thinking about how it will look to them if it takes longer than you said. You start pre-writing the explanation you will owe them in March. You are now doing 2 jobs, the work and the account of the work, and only one of them pays. I want to name something honestly here, because it has become the water we swim in, and nobody remarks on it anymore. There is a whole way of working now, built entirely on announcing. Say the goal publicly so you are accountable. Post the first day. Post day 2. Bring people along on the journey. And I understand the appeal of it. I genuinely do, because being watched does produce a kind of motion. But watch what it actually selects for over a year. It selects for things that look good in week 1. It selects for the beginnings of projects, because beginnings photograph well and middles do not. And the people I have watched do this for a few years have an enormous quantity of first weeks behind them and almost no finished work, and they are baffled by it, because they were never lazy for a single day. They were not lazy. They were paid early, and once a thing has paid you, it is very hard to make it pay you again. So the first silence is this. Between now and December, the plan does not leave your head except onto paper. Not to your closest friend, not casually, at dinner, in the tone that pretends it is not a big deal. Nobody. And I know the objection, so let me answer it now. What about accountability? What about the person who keeps me honest? We will come back to that, because there is a version of it that is real and a version of it that is a trap, and the difference is the subject of the fifth silence. Now, the plan does have to go somewhere. Held entirely in your head, it will drift and blur, and by October you will have quietly rewritten it into something easier without noticing you did it. So it goes onto paper. And paper is not a lesser version of telling somebody. It is a better one, and it is better for a reason worth understanding. When you write it down, you get the definiteness without the discharge. All 4 of these teachers insisted on the written aim, and none of them was being fussy about stationery. A written thing is exact in a way a spoken thing never is. You cannot write it vaguely and get away with it, because the vagueness is visible on the page, sitting there, looking back at you. You can absolutely say it vaguely and have a friend nod at it. So write it in one sentence, with a date and a number in it, on something that is not a screen you will scroll past. Put it where you will see it in the first minute of the day, and then say nothing. For the rest, just try the experiment. Decide the thing, write it down, and then hold it. Notice what happens in your body when you do not release it. That pressure, that slight uncomfortable fullness, is not a problem to be solved. That is fuel with nowhere to go but forward. Silence 2, the reasons. The second one is subtler, and you will catch yourself doing it within about a day of paying attention. You stop explaining yourself. Not the plan. You have already stopped saying that. I mean the running commentary underneath your ordinary life. The constant low-level justification of your own choices to people who did not ask. You leave early, and you explain why. You decline the drink, and you explain why. You say no to something, and you attach a paragraph. You are not answering a question. Nobody asked a question. You are volunteering a defense. Here is why it matters, and it is not about confidence, although that is where the popular version stops. Every explanation is a small admission that the choice requires one. The word does its work whether or not you intended it to, and what you have just told your own deeper mind, in your own voice, is that this decision of yours is a case that needs arguing. Say that 40 times over 4 months, and you have carefully installed the idea that your own choices are provisional and up for review. Shin had a line about this that has stayed with me for 20 years, and it is not one of the famous ones. She talked about people neutralizing their own words, saying the thing, and then, in the next breath, undoing it. That is what an explanation usually is. It is the undoing, delivered politely. Now, I want to be precise, because there is a way to hear this that turns you into an unpleasant person, and that is not the instruction. You are not becoming curt. You are not withholding warmth. You can be enormously kind and say almost nothing about your reasons. In fact, the kindest people I know are the least explaining people I know, because explaining is quietly about you, and they are busy paying attention to the other person. The replacement is short and warm and complete. I can't tonight, but have a wonderful time. That's not for me, but thank you for thinking of it. I'm going to head off. Full stop, no paragraph. Watch what happens the first week. Two things, both instructive. The first is that almost nobody asks for more. The explanation you have been supplying your whole adult life was never being requested. You were answering a question that lives in your head. The second is that you will feel, briefly, rude. That feeling is worth examining rather than obeying, because it is not conscience. It is the withdrawal symptom of a habit. Bob Proctor used to say that the discomfort you feel when you change a behavior is not information about whether the behavior is right. It is just information that it is new. And here is the part that surprises people, so I will say it plainly. Going quiet about your reasons does not make you distant. It makes you legible. People know exactly where they stand with someone who says a clean no, and they never quite know where they stand with someone who says a soft no, wrapped in 6 reasons, because 6 reasons sounds like a door that might open if they push. There is a practical version of this you can run tomorrow. For 1 week, count. Just count, do not fix anything. Every time you supply a reason nobody asked for, make a mark. Most people are somewhere between 8 and 20 a day and have no idea. Then in the second week, cut it in half. Not to 0, half. You will find something at the bottom of it, and it is the actual subject of this silence. Underneath most explaining is a request. You are asking the other person to agree that you were allowed. And a person who spends 4 months quietly not asking to be allowed arrives in December as someone slightly different, in a way that has nothing to do with what they achieved. Silence 3, the complaint. This is the expensive one. If you only take one of the 7, take this one. I am not going to tell you that complaining is negative and negativity is bad, because that is a bumper sticker and it has never changed anyone. I want to show you the mechanics, because once you see them, you cannot unsee them. Here is what a complaint actually is, structurally. It is a statement, made out loud, with feeling, in the present tense, about a condition you do not want, delivered to an audience that will usually confirm it. Now go back and read that sentence again, and notice that you have just read the recipe every one of these 4 teachers gave for installing something in the deeper mind. Statement, out loud, with feeling, present tense, confirmed by a second party. That is not an accident of language. That is the same machinery. Complaining is not the opposite of affirmation. Complaining is affirmation, running perfectly, aimed at the thing you are trying to leave. And it has one property that makes it far more powerful than anything you will do on purpose. It is effortless and it is emotionally satisfying. You never have to remind yourself to complain. There is no discipline involved. It comes with a small hit of relief and, if the audience is right, a little companionship on top. So most people spend 20 minutes a day faithfully practicing the thing they say they want to stop, and 4 minutes a week half-heartedly practicing the thing they say they want to start, and then they wonder why the ratio in their life looks the way it does. Hill put it in a colder way. He said the deeper mind does not evaluate. It does not sit in judgment on the material handed to it and decide whether the material is fair or accurate or good for you. It takes what is handed down and it goes to work on it. That is its entire job description, and it is extremely good at it. So the money is tight, and you say the money is tight, and you say it with real feeling because it is real, and the room agrees with you, and you have just spent your best instrument reinforcing the exact condition you would give anything to change. Now, 2 things I am not saying, because this teaching gets twisted into something cruel very easily. I am not saying pretend. If the money is tight, the money is tight, and lying to yourself about it is not this practice. It is a different and much worse practice. Denial makes people strange, and it does not work. And I am not saying carry it alone. There is a difference between a complaint and a conversation. If something is genuinely wrong and you need to think it through with someone you trust, do that. Do it once, do it properly, decide something at the end of it, and stop. That is not complaining. That is counsel, and every one of these 4 teachers was in favor of it. The complaint is the other thing. It is the 11th telling. It is the version you have now told 4 people that has stopped producing any new information and has started producing only agreement, and it has quietly become a small performance you do about your own life. Here is the test, and it is a good one. Ask yourself, is this sentence trying to change something, or is it trying to be witnessed? If it is trying to change something, it will have a request in it or a decision at the end of it. If it is only trying to be witnessed, it will not, and it will need to be said again tomorrow. For 4 months, the 11th telling is over. When the thing goes wrong, and it will, you get one honest conversation with somebody who can actually help, and then it goes into the work rather than into the air. There is one more layer to this, and it is the one people miss because it does not sound like complaining at all. It is the complaint you make with your face, the sigh at the desk, the particular way you say fine when somebody asks how you are, the small performance of being tired, being stretched, being up against it. None of that is a sentence, and all of it is doing the same work, because the deeper mind is not a grammarian. It reads the state you are broadcasting, and you are broadcasting it about 40 times a day for free. I am not asking you to be relentlessly cheerful. That is exhausting, and it is also a performance, just a more tiring one. I am asking you to stop rehearsing hardship when nobody has asked and nothing is being solved. Here is the replacement, and it takes no extra time because it goes in the slot the complaint was already occupying. When something goes wrong and you feel the sentence loading, ask one question instead, out loud if you are alone. What does this make possible? Not as a positive thinking exercise, as an actual question with an actual answer that you are required to produce. Hill built a whole principle on this, and it is one of his least fashionable and most useful, that every setback carries something usable inside it, and that the thing is not delivered, it has to be looked for, deliberately, at the time. He was not claiming everything happens for a reason. He was claiming that the search itself changes what you do next, which is a much smaller and much more defensible claim, and it is true. Some days the answer will be almost nothing. It means I now know that supplier is unreliable. Fine. That is still a fact you did not have this morning, and you got it instead of getting a mood. You will notice the gap immediately. There is a small hole in the day where the complaining used to sit, and it is uncomfortable, and something has to fill it. The 7th silence is what fills it, and that is why it is last. Silence 4. The request for permission. You are going to have to look closely for this one, because it almost never comes out sounding like a question. It sounds like this. What do you think about me doing this? Do you think that's crazy? I'm probably being unrealistic, but I don't know, maybe it's a stupid idea. Every one of those is a request for permission wearing the coat of a conversation. And here is the trap, which is beautiful and awful. You are not actually asking for information. If you were asking for information, you would ask someone who has done the thing. You are asking the people nearest to you, who have mostly not done the thing, and what you are asking them for is a feeling. You want the feeling of being backed. Now watch what they do, and be fair to them while you watch, because they are not villains. They love you. And love, in most people, expresses itself first as protection. So when you hand a fragile new intention to somebody who loves you, their reflex is to check it for ways it could hurt you. They are not trying to stop you. They are running a safety inspection, because that is what care looks like from the inside. The trouble is that a new aim cannot survive a safety inspection. Nothing new can. At the point where you are asking, the thing has no evidence attached to it. It is entirely made of intention. So the inspection finds exactly what an inspection of an unevidenced thing must find, which is that there is no evidence, and it says so gently, and you walk away with the plan slightly smaller than it was an hour ago. Nobody was cruel, nobody was wrong, and the thing died anyway. There is a story Hill told about this that I want to give you properly, because the usual telling stops one sentence too early, and the last sentence is the whole point. Henry Ford decided he wanted an 8-cylinder engine cast in a single piece of metal. He took it to his own engineers, who were not fools and were not timid, and they went away and did the work and came back and told him it could not be done. Not that it was difficult, that it was impossible. Ford told them to produce it anyway. They said again that it was impossible. He told them to stay on it until it was possible, however long that took. Now here is the part that gets left out. What followed was not a triumphant montage. It was months of failure, conducted quietly, out of public view, while the company said nothing about it. They tried and it did not work. And they tried again and it did not work. And by any weekly progress report, the project was a failure for the better part of a year. A prototype finally ran in early 1932, and by the end of that year the engines were coming off the line, and it was the first one of its kind ever mass-produced. Notice everything Ford did not do. He did not take a vote. He had asked his engineers a technical question and received a technical answer. And when the answer conflicted with the decision won, and the answer became a scheduling problem. And notice that the whole thing happened in the dark. Not because anybody was being secretive for its own sake. Because a project that fails for 11 months cannot survive being watched, and the people running it knew that. Hill was blunt about which people get consulted. He said that a person's own aim should not be laid open to anyone whose agreement is not required to achieve it, and he had a hard word for the people who take their dreams around the neighborhood for a second opinion. So for 4 months, the questions changed shape. Instead of "what do you think about this?" you ask people about things they actually know. How did you do that? What did the first year look like? What would you do differently? Those are real questions, and they bring back real material, and none of them hands anybody a vote. And if you catch yourself opening your mouth to ask, "Do you think I'm being stupid?" close it and write the question down instead. Then read it back the next morning. Almost every time, you will find you already knew the answer, and what you wanted was company while you did the frightening thing. You do not get that company for 4 months. That is the price. What you get instead is a decision that belongs entirely to you, which is a strange and unfamiliar feeling, and, if you have never had it, a genuinely emotional one. Silence 5. The Progress Report. Now to the objection I promised you in the first silence, because it deserves a real answer. The objection is accountability. Surely telling someone makes you more likely to do it. Surely the check-in is the thing that keeps you honest. Here is my answer after 20 years of watching it. Accountability works when the other person can see the work. It fails, and fails badly, when all the other person can see is your report of the work. Because the moment what they see is your report, the report becomes the deliverable. And a report is enormously easier to produce than a result. So you will produce the report, on time, every week, and it will be true, and it will be about the parts that went well, and you will feel checked in on and accounted for, while the actual thing quietly does not move. This is why the person who posts their progress every day for 6 weeks and then stops is not a mystery. They did not run out of discipline, they ran out of week 1, and week 5 is not filmable, and there was never a plan for what to do when the work stopped producing updates. And the work will stop producing updates. That is not a risk, it is the shape of every real thing. There is a long middle where nothing reportable happens, where you are doing the same unremarkable session over and over, and there is genuinely nothing to say about it, and there will not be for a while. Let me tell you about a man who lived in that middle for 6 years. In 1992, he put on his first play. It cost him his savings. Almost nobody came. He did it again and again. For 6 years, every production he mounted failed, and at one point in the middle of it, he was living out of his car. 6 years is not a rough patch. 6 years is a career. And then in 1998, he restaged the same play he had started with, and this time the room was full. And everything after that is the part people know. His name is Tyler Perry, and he now owns a studio in Atlanta with a car parked outside it like the one he used to sleep in. I do not tell you that for the ending. Endings are cheap, and every one of these stories has one, which is why we tell them. I tell you for the middle. 6 years in which there was no progress report he could have given anybody that would have sounded like anything other than another failure. If his commitment had needed weekly reporting to survive, it would have died in 1994, and we would never have heard the name. So the fifth silence is this: no updates. Not to the group, not to the partner, not to the friend who asks how it's going. It's going well, thanks. That is the whole answer, and it is not a lie. If you want real accountability, and you should, build the kind that cannot be satisfied by talking. Something with a number in it that either happened or did not. Pages, sessions, calls, dollars. Written down where you can see the row of them. You are accountable to the row, not to an audience. And I will say one thing here, because it is the only place in this video it fits. You are about to go quiet for 4 months, and quiet is harder than people expect, mostly because nothing in your week points at the thing anymore. There is no reminder in it. If you want one voice still arriving that is not a person you owe an explanation to, subscribe and let this be the thing that keeps turning up while you say nothing to anyone else. Then back to silence. Silence 6, the old story. There is one more thing you say out loud constantly, and it is the one you would defend hardest, because you do not experience it as a claim. You experience it as a fact about the world. I've never been good with money. I'm not a morning person. I always start things and never finish them. I'm just not someone who's comfortable in a room like that. Listen to the tense on those. Every one of them is in the present, and every one of them is stated as permanent, and every one of them is being said by the one voice your deeper mind treats as an authority. Now here is the thing that makes it stick, and it is worth understanding rather than just being told to stop. Those sentences are usually true. That is the problem. You are not lying. You have decades of evidence, and you can produce it on request. You genuinely have started things and not finished them. So the sentence feels like honesty, and refusing to say it feels like delusion, and you would rather be honest than delusional, which is to your credit. But look at what the sentence actually does with the evidence. It takes a pile of things that happened in the past, under specific conditions, mostly when you were a different person with different information, and it converts them into a description of your nature. That is not honesty. That is a conclusion, and it is a much bigger claim than the evidence supports. Here is the honest version. I have started things and not finished them. That is all the evidence gives you. Past tense, about events. The moment you say, I'm the kind of person who, you have quietly upgraded a set of events into an identity, and identities are self-executing in a way that events are not. Proctor used to hammer at one idea until people were tired of it, which is that almost nobody is being held back by their circumstances. They are being held back by a picture of themselves they picked up somewhere and have never once put down to examine. And the picture gets maintained mostly by talking. So for 4 months, the autobiography goes quiet, not replaced with a better one. I want to be careful here because this is exactly the point where this material goes wrong and people start saying things they do not believe, standing in front of mirrors, and then feeling like frauds by Wednesday. You do not need to say, I am fantastic with money. You will not believe it, and the argument you start with yourself will cost you more than the sentence gains. You need to stop issuing the verdict. That is all. When somebody asks, you can simply describe rather than conclude. I'm working on that at the moment. That has been true up to now. I'm changing how I handle that. All of those are honest. None of them are a verdict, and none of them refile the old picture. And there is one more, which is harder and better, and it is where the sixth silence stops being about avoidance. The stories you tell about your past out loud are the ones that stay accessible. The ones you stop telling get quieter, not because you have suppressed them, but because a memory that stops being rehearsed stops being at the front. You have decades of material back there, and you have selected a small handful to keep polished, and the selection was not made deliberately. It was made by which ones got told at dinner. 4 months of not telling the old ones will genuinely loosen their grip, not erase, loosen, and loose is enough to work with. There is a particular version of this that costs people years, and I want to name it because almost everyone watching has one. It is the story you tell about the thing that went wrong, the business that folded, the marriage, the years you consider wasted, and you have told it so many times that it has acquired a shape, with a beginning and a villain and a moral, and the moral is almost always a sentence about what you are now not able to do. That story is not a memory anymore. It has been polished into a position, and the position is doing real work in your life because it is the standing justification for not attempting the next thing, and it is a good one, and people accept it. I am not going to ask you to reframe it. Reframing on demand is hollow and you can feel it happening. I am going to ask something much smaller. For 4 months, do not tell it. That is all. Not to new people, not as context, not as the funny short version. If somebody asks directly, give them the facts in 4 words and move on. Here is what happens, and it surprises people. Around week 6 or 7, without any effort on your part, the story starts to seem smaller. Not resolved, smaller. Because a great deal of its size was maintenance, and you stopped doing the maintenance. Shin had an instruction about this that I think is the single most practical thing she ever wrote, and she gave it to people who were carrying something heavy. Stop discussing it. Not stop feeling it, stop discussing it. She understood that discussion is not neutral, that talking about a condition is a form of feeding it, and that the mouth is where most people quietly renew a burden they say they want to put down. Silence 7. The one sentence you do say. Now the whole thing turns over, and I hope you have been waiting for this, because 6 silences in a row from a channel built on the power of the spoken word should have felt like a contradiction the entire time. It is not a contradiction. It was never about saying less. Your word is an instrument with one real function. It instructs the part of you that does not argue. That is what it is for. Shin said it, Hill said it in different language, Goddard said it in different language again, and Hanel built a 24-week course around getting a person to actually do it rather than admire it. And an instrument with one function has an efficiency problem, which is that it also works when you point it at the wall. Everything in the first 6 silences is you pointing it at the wall. The announcement, the explanation, the complaint, the permission, the report, the old story, all of them are the instrument firing all day at rooms and people and nobody in particular. So we did not turn it off. We aimed it. Here is what you say instead, and you say it where nobody can hear you. Shin gave a woman a sentence once, a woman who wanted a place on the stage and did not have one. The sentence was, "Infinite Spirit, open the way for my great abundance. I am an irresistible magnet for all that belongs to me, by divine right." She got a significant part in a successful opera. Now I know how that lands on a modern ear, and I am not going to pretend it does not sound like a spell. So let me tell you what it is doing, and if you are not religious, you can strip the language and keep the mechanism, and the mechanism is the part that works. Look at the grammar. It is not a request for a specific object. She did not name a role, a producer, or a theater. She asked for the way to open, and then she made a statement about what she already is. That is the shape, an opening, and an identity, not a shopping list. And that matters enormously, because the specific object is where most people's word goes to die. You demand one particular outcome by one particular route, and the route does not come, and after 9 weeks you conclude the whole thing is nonsense. The route was never yours to specify. Hill said the aim is fixed and the plans are expendable, and this is the same instruction wearing older clothes. So your one sentence has 2 halves, and you build it yourself tonight, and it takes about 10 minutes. The first half is the opening, some version of, "Let the way open for the thing I have decided on. If the religious language is yours, use hers. She meant it." If it is not, then say it plainly. The way opens. I am shown the next step. It does not matter. What matters is that you are not dictating the route. The second half is the identity, in the present, and this is where you must be careful to stay inside what you can hold. Not "I am rich," if you cannot say that without an argument starting. I am someone who does what they said. I am a person who finishes. I am becoming exactly the person this requires. Choose the one that produces no rebuttal in you, because a sentence that starts an argument is worse than no sentence. Then here is the practice, and it is short enough that you have no excuse. Twice a day, once in the first few minutes after you wake, before the day has handed you anything, and once in the last few minutes before you sleep, when the reasoning mind has loosened its grip and things go in with much less resistance. Both windows are old news to every one of these teachers, and they agreed about them across 100 years and 4 very different personalities, which is about as close to proof as this material gets. Say it slowly. Feel it rather than recite it. 20 seconds is enough. Then stop. And that is the entire speaking budget for 4 months. 2 sentences a day, aimed inward, in a room by yourself. Everything else, everything you would have spent on the announcement and the explanation and the complaint and the permission and the report and the old story, gets left in the account. That is what Hanel was really doing with the 24-week rule. He was not withholding information. The information was in the back of the book, and any student could have torn the envelope open. He was enforcing a term. He understood that this only works when a person stops sampling it and commits to a fixed stretch with no exits and no verdict delivered halfway through. You have about 16 weeks. That is enough. It is enough because you are not trying to complete anything by December. You are trying to arrive in December as a person who spent 4 months not leaking. The close. Let me say the honest part, because I would be doing you a disservice if I sent you into this without it. Silence and hiding look identical from the inside. 4 months of saying nothing while you build is one of the most powerful things a person can do. 4 months of saying nothing while nothing happens is just a quiet year going by, and you will not be able to tell which one you are in from the feeling, because both of them feel like this: uneventful, a bit lonely, and slightly virtuous. The only thing that separates them is evidence. Something small that actually moved, early, with a date on it. So put one in. Do not wait until December to find out which of the two you have been doing since August, because by then it is not a course correction, it is a year. That is exactly why I built the 14-day money magnet the way I did. 14 days, 1 short email and 1 small task a day, pointed at attracting your first $100 on purpose. And the reason it is 100 and not a fortune is that a fortune is not evidence. A fortune takes years, and by then you have explained it to yourself 6 different ways. $100, arriving inside 2 weeks from a direction you were not managing, is small enough to actually happen, and specific enough that you cannot rewrite it afterwards. It is paid, and I will not apologize for that, but the guarantee is real. Do the 14 days properly, and if the 100 does not come, write to me, and I return every penny. The link is in the description. Put it in the first 2 weeks of your silence. Then you will know, in September rather than in December, whether the quiet is doing what quiet is supposed to do. And then go dark until the year runs out. Nobody needs to know what you decided in August. Not your friends, not the people who would have been encouraging, not the ones who would have been careful with you. There is no version of this where telling them makes it more likely. They will find out the way people always find out, which is not by being told. They will see somebody in December who is harder to read than the person they saw in August, who does not explain themselves, who has stopped narrating what is wrong, and who has clearly been doing something. And they will ask, what changed? Say something ordinary. You will want to tell them everything, and by then it will not cost you anything, and you can if you like. But there is a version of you that just says, nothing much, and goes back to work. Be that one.